The doors to the grand chamber opened, and Ambassador Marcus Webb stepped into a room that made him feel smaller than he had ever felt in his 62 years of life. The Galactic Council headquarters was carved into the heart of an artificial moon, a structure so massive that it contained its own weather systems. The main chamber stretched upward for nearly 2 kilometers, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 holographic displays. Floating platforms held delegations from across the known universe, each one representing a species that had conquered the stars while humanity was still learning to make fire. 3,000 alien species watched as the human walked to the central platform. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some existed as clouds of sentient gas, while others were living machines that had transcended biological limitations millions of years ago. All of them stared at the single human standing alone in the center of their judgment. Marcus kept his back straight and his face calm. He was a former chemistry professor from a small university in Ohio, a man who had spent most of his life teaching bored undergraduates about molecular bonds. Now he stood accused of the greatest crime in galactic history. The High Arbiter rose from their throne. Velox was a being of liquid mercury, constantly shifting between humanoid shapes and abstract forms that hurt the human eye to observe. When they spoke, their voice came from everywhere at once. The representative of Earth stands before this council, accused of contaminating the water supply of the Threllian homeworld. 17 billion sentient beings perished. Their civilization, which stood for 900,000 years, has ended. The evidence suggests a human diplomatic vessel passed through their system 7 days before the contamination was detected. Marcus felt the weight of 3,000 hostile gazes pressing down on him. He had practiced this moment 100 times, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of facing judgment from the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. The Council recognizes the accused, Velox continued. How does Earth respond to these charges? Marcus stepped forward to the speaking platform. A translation field surrounded him, converting his words into the languages of every species present. Earth denies these charges completely, he said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. We had no reason to harm the Threllian people. We barely knew they existed. A ripple of angry sounds moved through the chamber. Clicks, hisses, electromagnetic pulses, and sounds that human ears could not even register. One delegation rose from their platform, beings of pure crystalline structure that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. The human lies, the crystal being said. Its voice was like glass scraping against stone. Our analysis of the contamination particles shows human molecular signatures. Your primitive water treatment chemicals were found in the Threllian water supply. Marcus turned to face the speaker. He recognized the species from his briefings. The crystalline hegemony, one of the oldest and most powerful factions in the Council. They had opposed humanity's admission to the galactic community from the very beginning. With respect, Marcus replied, human water treatment chemicals are not unique to Earth. The basic compounds we use are available on any developed world. Anyone could have obtained them. You accuse another species of this crime? The crystal being demanded. You dare to suggest that someone framed your primitive civilization? I suggest that the evidence deserves closer examination before 17 billion deaths are placed on the shoulders of a species that joined this Council only 40 years ago. The chamber erupted into chaos. Thousands of voices speaking thousands of languages, all of them angry, all of them directed at the single human standing in the center of the storm. Marcus waited, letting the noise wash over him. Watching the faces of beings he could barely comprehend, High Arbiter Velox raised a limb that might have been an arm. And silence fell instantly. The accused has the right to prove their innocence, Velox declared. Earth may invoke the trial of truths. Marcus felt his blood run cold. He had been warned about this. The Trial of Truths was an ancient galactic tradition, a series of challenges designed to test the accused in ways that would reveal their guilt or innocence. It was meant to be fair, but it had been created by species that did not understand human biology, that no human had ever survived the trial of truths. If I refuse? Marcus asked. Then Earth is declared guilty. Your planet will be quarantined. Your species will be forbidden from leaving your solar system for 1,000 years. Any human vessel found in galactic space will be destroyed. Marcus thought about his wife back on Earth, watching this broadcast with the rest of humanity. He thought about his grandchildren, who would grow up in a prison world if he failed. He thought about the billions of humans who were counting on him to prove their innocence. I accept the trial of truths, he said. The crystal being who had accused him seemed to smile, though its face was not designed for such expressions. The first challenge has already been prepared. The classroom of poisons awaits. Guards approached Marcus, beings of living metal that moved with mechanical precision. They led him through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past windows that showed the stars spinning slowly outside. Finally, they stopped before a simple white door. Beyond this door, one guard explained, you will find 7 glasses of water. Some are safe. Some are poisoned. You must drink from each glass. If you can identify the poison before you drink, you will be given an antidote. If you cannot identify it, you will die. Marcus stared at the door. His training as a chemist had taught him to identify hundreds of dangerous substances, but the galaxy contained millions of poisons he had never encountered. The odds were impossible. How many beings have survived this challenge? He asked. In the last 10,000 years, 47 accused have attempted the classroom of poisons. None survived past the 3rd glass. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Somewhere above him, in the observation galleries, his assistant Priya was watching. She had promised to find evidence that would clear humanity's name. He just needed to survive long enough for her to succeed. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The classroom was smaller than he expected, a plain white room with a single table in the center. 7 glasses of clear liquid stood in a perfect row, each one reflecting the harsh overhead lights. Sitting behind the table was the proctor, an insectoid being with compound eyes that showed Marcus's own reflection 1,000 times over. Welcome. Human, the proctor said, its mandibles clicking with each word. You are the first of your species to attempt this challenge. I confess I am curious to see how long you last. Marcus approached the table and looked at the glasses. They all appeared identical. Clear liquid. No visible contamination, no obvious differences. The rules are simple, the proctor continued. You must drink from each glass in order, from left to right. Before you drink, you may examine the liquid and make one guess about its contents. If your guess is correct, and the liquid is dangerous, I will provide an antidote. If your guess is wrong, or if you fail to identify a poison, you will experience the full effects. Marcus picked up the first glass and held it to the light. To most species, it would appear to be pure water. But Marcus was not most species. He was a human who had spent 30 years teaching other humans to see what others could not. The light bent slightly as it passed through the liquid. Not much, barely noticeable. But Marcus had trained his eyes to catch exactly this kind of anomaly. Heavy water, he said. Deuterium oxide. The hydrogen atoms had been replaced with deuterium. The proctor's mandibles stopped clicking. For a long moment, the insectoid being simply stared at him with those 1,000 reflecting eyes. That is correct, the proctor finally said, unable to hide the surprise in its voice. How did you know? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. On Earth, we learned to see the invisible. It is how we survived. He raised the glass to his lips and drank. The heavy water was harmless in small quantities for humans, though it would have killed most other species. He set the empty glass down and reached for the second one. 6 more glasses remained. 6 more chances to die. And somewhere above him, 3,000 aliens watched, waiting to see the human fail. But Marcus Webb had not come to fail. He had come to teach the galaxy a lesson about humanity. The lesson was just beginning. The second glass sat before Marcus Webb, and 3,000 alien species held their breath in the observation gallery above the classroom of poisons. Ambassador Priya Dowell gripped the railing with white-knuckled hands. She was 34 years old, a xenobiologist who had dedicated her life to understanding alien life forms. Now she watched her mentor face death, while she desperately searched for evidence that might save both him and all of humanity. Her portable terminal displayed encrypted files she had managed to extract from the Council's historical archives. Something was wrong with the official story of the Threllian extinction. The timeline did not match. The evidence was too perfect, too convenient, but she needed more time. And Marcus was running out of glasses below her, in the white chamber. Marcus lifted the second glass and brought it close to his face. He did not drink immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes and inhaled slowly through his nose. The proctor watched with obvious curiosity. No previous accused had ever bothered to smell the liquid. What could a sense of smell possibly detect in water? But humans were different. Their noses contained over 400 types of olfactory receptors, capable of detecting thousands of distinct chemical compounds. It was a legacy of their evolutionary past, when their ancestors needed to identify rotten food, poisonous plants, and dangerous predators. Marcus detected something faint, almost imperceptible. A sweet smell, like almonds, hiding beneath the apparent purity of the water. Arsenic, he announced, bonded to organic compounds to mask its presence. But the molecular structure is breaking down, releasing trace amounts of arsine gas. The proctor's compound eyes seemed to widen, though it was difficult to tell with an insectoid face. You can smell arsenic? That is impossible. The concentration is less than 1 part per billion. Humans can detect certain compounds at extraordinarily low concentrations, Marcus explained. Our ancestors who could smell poison survived. Those who could not died. Evolution is a harsh teacher. The proctor produced a small vial and added 3 drops to the glass. The antidote neutralized the arsenic, and Marcus drank the water without hesitation. 2 glasses down. 5 remaining in the grand chamber. The assembled delegations watched through holographic displays. The crystalline hegemony's representative, a being called Axiom 7, observed with growing unease. The human was supposed to die quickly, another primitive creature destroyed by challenges designed for far more advanced species. Instead, the human was winning. Axiom 7 opened a private communication channel to their operatives throughout the station. The plan was unraveling. If the human survived the trial of truths, questions would be asked. Investigations would begin. The carefully constructed evidence pointing to Earth might not withstand scrutiny. Something needed to be done. Back in the classroom, Marcus examined the third glass. This one was different. He could not smell anything unusual, and the light passed through it normally. But when he held the glass at a certain angle, he noticed something strange. The liquid seemed to glow, just slightly, at the edge of his vision. "May I have a moment?" he asked the proctor. "You have unlimited time to examine each glass. The rules do not specify a time limit." Marcus stepped back from the table and dimmed his eyes, letting them adjust to the lower light levels. It was a trick he had learned from years of working with fluorescent compounds in his laboratory. Human eyes could partially perceive ultraviolet light, a capability most species lacked in the dimness. The third glass glowed with a soft blue light that would have been invisible to most alien observers. Bioluminescent neurotoxin, Marcus said. From a deep-sea creature, if I had to guess. The compound fluoresces under certain light conditions. The proctor administered the antidote, and Marcus drank again above him. Priya had stopped watching the trial. She had found something in the archives that demanded her full attention. The ship registry logs showed that a human diplomatic vessel had passed through Threlian space 7 days before the contamination. But Priya had discovered an anomaly in the data. The ship's identification codes had been altered, clumsily edited by someone who did not fully understand human encryption protocols. The original codes belonged to a vessel that had been decommissioned 3 years ago. Someone had resurrected its identity and used it to frame Earth. But who had access to decommissioned human ship codes? And who had the technical knowledge to alter Council records? Priya needed to find answers, but she could not do it alone. She needed help from someone who understood the Council systems. Someone who had no loyalty to the factions that wanted humanity destroyed. She found her unlikely ally in the shadows of the observation gallery. The being called itself Orin, and it was a void swimmer, a species that existed as living darkness. They fed on information, absorbing data the way other creatures absorbed nutrients. Most species feared them, and for good reason. A void swimmer could extract secrets from any database, any mind, any encrypted system. "You seek the truth," Orin whispered, its voice like static in her earpiece. "I have been seeking the same truth for a very long time. Why would you help humanity?" Priya asked, keeping her voice low. "Because the crystalline hegemony has been manipulating galactic politics for 10,000 years. They eliminated my species' homeworld when we grew too powerful. They destroyed the Threlian civilization because it stood in their way. And now they seek to destroy your species before you can challenge their dominance. You have proof?" "I have been gathering proof for millennia. But I needed a species brave enough to stand against them. I believe humanity may be that species." Priya glanced down at the classroom, where Marcus was examining the 4th glass. "Help me save my friend, and I will make sure the galaxy learns the truth about the hegemony." In the White Chamber, Marcus had discovered that the 4th glass contained water contaminated with radioactive isotopes. He detected it by the subtle warmth the liquid generated, a consequence of radioactive decay. The dosage would not kill him immediately, but it would cause radiation sickness within hours. The proctor provided chelation agents. That would help his body eliminate the radioactive material. And Marcus drank once more. 4 glasses completed. 3 remaining. The 5th glass was perhaps the most dangerous yet. Marcus examined it for several minutes, searching for any sign of contamination. The water appeared perfectly normal. No unusual smell, no strange light properties, no temperature anomalies. But something was wrong. He could feel it. Then he understood. The water was too perfect. In nature, water always contained trace minerals, dissolved gases, microscopic organisms. Even the purest laboratory water had some impurities. This water had none. It was impossibly clean. "Viral agent," Marcus announced. "Suspended in hyperpure water to prevent degradation. The virus would rewrite cellular DNA within hours of consumption." The proctor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. No accused has ever identified that contamination. "How can you possibly know?" "Because nothing in nature is perfect," Marcus replied. "Perfection itself is a warning sign." The antidote was administered, and Marcus drank. His hands were beginning to shake now, the accumulated stress of the trial wearing on his body. But he forced himself to remain calm. 2 glasses remained above him. Priya and Orin had begun their infiltration of the crystalline hegemony's diplomatic quarters. The void swimmer moved through shadows, bypassing security systems that would have stopped any physical being. Priya followed, her heart pounding, knowing that discovery meant death. In the grand chamber, Axiom 7 received a security alert. Someone had breached their diplomatic systems. The crystal being's form shifted with anger, and it sent orders to its enforcers. Find the intruders. Eliminate them. Protect the secret at any cost. The race against time had begun. Marcus faced 2 more glasses of potentially lethal water. Priya faced an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. And humanity's future hung in the balance. Marcus reached for the 6th glass and lifted it to the light. For the first time since the trial began, he felt genuine fear. He could not identify anything wrong with the water. It appeared completely normal. His eyes detected no anomalies. His nose detected no poisons. His skin felt no unusual temperature. The liquid was perfect, but not the dangerous perfection of the previous glass. This was ordinary perfection, the kind that should have been completely safe. Every instinct Marcus possessed screamed that something was wrong, but he could not identify what. The proctor watched with obvious anticipation. This was the glass that killed everyone, the poison that no organic species could detect. Marcus set the glass down and took a deep breath. He was a scientist. He needed to think like a scientist. What could harm a biological creature without being detectable by biological senses? The answer came to him in a flash of terrible understanding. The poison was not in the water, the poison was the water. The molecular structure has been altered, Marcus said slowly, working through his realization. The water itself has been changed at the atomic level. When it contacts organic tissue, it will crystallize, turning biological matter into solid crystal from the inside out. The proctor froze. For a long moment, the insectoid being did not move at all. That is a crystalline hegemony weapon, the proctor finally said. How could you possibly know about it? In the grand chamber, Axiom 7 rose from their delegation platform. The human had identified their secret technology. The carefully constructed plan was collapsing. This trial is invalid, Axiom 7 declared. The human has clearly been given classified information, but it was too late. The accusation itself was an admission. Why would the hegemony have classified information about a poison used in a trial designed by the Council? Questions began to ripple through the assembled delegations. Suspicions that had been dormant for millennia began to awaken. And in the classroom of poisons. Marcus Webb smiled as the proctor administered the antidote. 1 glass remained. The 7th glass stood alone on the table, and the entire galaxy held its breath. Marcus Webb had done the impossible. He had survived 6 attempts to kill him, identifying poisons that had claimed the lives of 47 accused beings over 10,000 years. No one in the history of the Galactic Council had ever reached the final glass, but reaching it and surviving it were 2 different things. In the observation gallery, the holographic displays showed the grand chamber in chaos. Delegates shouted at each other across the void. The crystalline hegemony had retreated to their platform, surrounded by security forces. As other species demanded explanations for how their secret technology had ended up in a trial of truths, High Arbiter Velox called for order. But even the ancient authority of the Council struggled to contain the storm that had been unleashed. Marcus ignored the noise. He focused entirely on the glass before him, studying it with the same careful attention he had given to every chemical compound he had ever analyzed in his long career. The proctor sat motionless behind the table, its compound eyes reflecting the human's face 1,000 times. There was something different about the insectoid being now. The clicking of its mandibles had stopped. It seemed almost nervous. You have performed better than any accused in recorded history, the proctor said. But the 7th challenge has never been survived. The poison within this glass is the most deadly substance known to exist in the galaxy. Marcus picked up the glass and examined it. The liquid inside appeared to be ordinary water, clear, colorless, odorless. No unusual light properties. No temperature anomalies. No molecular restructuring. He sniffed carefully, and this time he caught something. A faint smell, barely perceptible, that triggered a memory from deep in his past. The smell reminded him of something from his childhood. Summer afternoons in his grandmother's kitchen. Mason jars lined up on the counter. The sweet scent of preserved fruit dot, and beneath that sweetness, something else. Something dangerous. Marcus began to laugh. The sound echoed through the classroom and into the grand chamber. 3,000 alien species watched as the human ambassador threw back his head and laughed like a man who had just heard the funniest joke in the universe. Human, the proctor said, its mandibles twitching with confusion. Do you understand what is in that glass? 1/1000th of a gram per kilogram of body mass is lethal. No antidote exists that can save you once you drink it. Marcus wiped tears from his eyes and smiled at the insectoid being. I know exactly what is in this glass. And I know something else. I know that whoever designed this trial did not understand anything about humans. He raised the glass to his lips. Stop! Someone shouted from the observation gallery. Marcus recognized Priya's voice, but he did not hesitate. He drank the entire glass in one long swallow. The grand chamber fell absolutely silent. Every being in the room expected to watch the human collapse, to see the deadliest poison in the galaxy claim another victim. Marcus set down the empty glass and turned to face the holographic cameras that broadcast his image across the chamber. The poison in that glass, he announced, is produced by a bacterium called Clostridium botulinum. On Earth, we call the toxin botulinum. 1 nanogram per kilogram of body mass is lethal to most carbon-based life forms. It is, as the proctor said, the most deadly naturally occurring poison in the known galaxy. He paused, letting his words sink in. On Earth, we inject it into our faces for cosmetic purposes. We call it Botox. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then someone in the assembled delegations made a sound that might have been a gasp. Then another. Then the entire chamber erupted into noise that defied translation. That is impossible, the proctor stammered. No species can survive botulinum toxin in the concentrations contained in that glass. Humans can, Marcus replied. In small doses, anyway. The amount in that glass was designed to kill a being 10 times my mass. For me, it was uncomfortable but survivable. I will need medical attention within the next few hours, but I will live. He turned to face the delegation platforms, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. Let me tell you something about my species. We evolved on one of the most hostile planets in this galaxy. Our atmosphere contains a corrosive gas called oxygen that destroys most organic compounds. We breathe it constantly. It is the air that keeps us alive. His voice grew stronger as he continued. Our planet is covered in a substance we call water, which is one of the most effective solvents in existence. It dissolves almost everything it touches. We drink it every day. We cannot survive without it. The delegations were listening now, truly listening, perhaps for the first time since humanity had joined the council. We consume ethanol, a compound that destroys brain cells and damages every organ in our bodies. We call it alcohol, and we drink it for pleasure. We eat capsaicin, a chemical weapon that causes pain and burning, because we enjoy the sensation. We consume caffeine, a pesticide that plants evolved to kill insects, because it helps us stay awake. Marcus spread his arms wide, encompassing the entire chamber. We did not survive your trial of truths because we are immune to poison. We survived because we have been consuming poison every single day of our evolutionary history. Our bodies are adapted to survive. Substances that would kill any other species in this room. He pointed toward the crystalline hegemony's platform. And now I have a question for thee. beings who designed this trial. How did a hegemony weapon end up in the sixth class? Who had access to crystalline restructuring technology? And why did someone alter the ship registry to frame humanity for the Thralian extinction? Axiom 7's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. These accusations are baseless. The human is trying to distract from his own guilt. But doubt had already spread through the chamber. Too many coincidences. Too many questions. The perfect evidence against humanity suddenly looked far less perfect. High Arbiter Velox raised a limb for silence. The accused has survived the trial of truths. By the ancient laws of this council, Marcus Webb of Earth is declared innocent of the poisoning charges. A wave of relief washed over Marcus, but he knew the battle was not over. The trial had bought humanity time, nothing more. The true enemy was still out there, still scheming, still determined to destroy his species. Far above the classroom, in the maintenance corridors of the artificial moon, Priya ran for her life. The crystalline hegemony's enforcers had found her. 3 beings of living crystal pursued her through the narrow passages, their bodies reflecting the emergency lights into blinding patterns. Orin flowed beside her, a shadow that offered protection, but could not fight the enforcers directly. "They are gaining," Orin whispered. "I cannot stop them." "You do not need to stop them," Priya gasped, her lungs burning. "You just need to get me to the Council's broadcast center." She clutched a data crystal in her hand, the evidence she and Orin had extracted from the hegemony systems. It contained everything. Recordings of hegemony leaders planning the Thralian extinction, detailed instructions for framing humanity, and communications with operatives who had carried out the actual contamination. If she could reach the broadcast center, she could transmit the evidence to every delegation in the chamber. The hegemony's conspiracy would be exposed, but the enforcers were faster than her. Crystal beings did not tire, did not slow down, did not need to breathe. They were gaining with every second. "There," Orin said, indicating a doorway ahead. "The broadcast center is through that door." Priya pushed herself harder, her vision blurring at the edges. She could hear the crystalline footsteps behind her, getting closer, closer. She reached the door and slammed her palm against the access panel. The door slid open, and she threw herself through, Orin flowing behind her. The enforcers reached the doorway just as it sealed shut. But crystal was harder than metal. The enforcers began cutting through the door with limbs that had been sharpened to molecular edges. Priya had seconds, maybe less. She found the broadcast terminal and inserted the data crystal. Her fingers flew across the controls, initiating a priority transmission to every display in the grand chamber. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." The door behind her began to give way. Crystal limbs punching through the metal. The transmission completed just as the enforcers burst through. In the grand chamber, every holographic display suddenly changed. The delegations found themselves watching a recording of Axiom 7 speaking with other hegemony leaders, their crystalline voices cold and calculating. The Thralians were becoming too influential. Their trade routes threatened our monopoly on quantum materials. They had to be eliminated. And humanity? The perfect scapegoats. Primitive, new to the Council, already distrusted. We eliminate 2 problems at once. The Thralians die, humanity is blamed, and our dominance remains unchallenged. The recording continued, showing detailed plans for contaminating the Thralian water supply, instructions for altering ship registry data, and communications with the operatives who had carried out the genocide. 17 billion deaths, all orchestrated by the crystalline hegemony to maintain their power. The chamber erupted into chaos. Axiom 7 tried to flee, but security forces had already surrounded the hegemony delegation. For the first time in 10,000 years, the ancient crystalline beings found themselves facing justice. In the broadcast center, Priya lay on the floor, the enforcers standing over her. But they had stopped attacking. Through the door, they could see the holographic displays showing their leaders' crimes. They knew it was over. Orin emerged from the shadows and helped Priya to her feet. "You did it," the Void Swimmer said. "You exposed the truth." Priya smiled weakly, her body aching from the chase. "We did it. All of us." In the Grand Chamber, Marcus Webb watched the evidence play out on the displays. He watched the hegemony's conspiracy unravel in real time. He watched justice finally come for the 17 billion Thrallians, who had died because of one faction's greed. But even as relief washed over him, he saw Axiom 7's crystalline form turn toward him. The hatred in those faceted eyes was unmistakable. "This is not over, human," Axiom 7 declared, loud enough for the entire chamber to hear. "I invoke the ancient law. Trial by combat. One representative from each accused party, fighting to the death." The chamber fell silent. Once more. High, Arbiter Velox's form shifted uneasily. "The trial of truths has already been completed. The accused is innocent. But now I am the accused," Axiom 7 countered. "And I invoke my right to trial by combat. Let the human face our champion. Let us see if their poison resistance saves them from Prism 1. A murmur of fear rippled through the delegations. Prism 1, the hegemony's greatest warrior. A being of pure crystalline intelligence that had never been defeated in 3,000 years of combat. Marcus looked up at the observation gallery, where Priya had just appeared, supported by a shadow that moved like living darkness. She shook her head frantically. She knew what Prism 1 was capable of. No human could survive against such an opponent, but if Marcus refused the challenge, the hegemony would claim victory. Their conspiracy would be forgiven. The 17 billion dead would go unavenged. Marcus stepped forward and met Axiom 7's gaze. "I accept," he said. And somewhere in the depths of the artificial moon, a being of living crystal began to stir. The news of Marcus Webb's acceptance spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every imaginable form watched their screens and wondered if they were about to witness the extinction of humanity's hope. On Earth, billions gathered in public squares and living rooms, watching the transmission from the Galactic Council with hearts full of dread. In the Grand Chamber, preparations began for the trial by combat. The central platform retracted, replaced by an arena of transparent crystal that would allow every delegation to witness the fight. From any angle, Priya forced her way through the crowd of diplomatic staff until she reached Marcus. Her face was pale with exhaustion and fear. "You cannot do this," she said, gripping his arm. "Prism 1 has killed 400 beings in combat, warriors from species that evolved for battle. You are a chemistry professor. I am also the only representative Earth has here," Marcus replied quietly. "If I refuse, the hegemony wins. Everything we have achieved today means nothing. Then let me fight instead. I am younger, faster." Marcus shook his head. "Priya, you just saved humanity by exposing the truth. Now I need you to do something else for me. I need you to watch. Whatever happens, I need someone to witness it and tell our people." Orin emerged from the shadows beside them. The Void Swimmer's form seemed more solid now, as if the being was preparing for something. "There may be another way," Orin said. "Prism 1 is a creature of light. It attacks by focusing beams through its crystalline body. But even light has limitations." "What do you mean?" Priya asked. "Crystal is perfect. That is its strength. But perfection is also a weakness. Anything that disrupts that perfection destroys the crystal's ability to focus light." Marcus considered this. His scientific mind was already working through the implications. Crystal relied on perfect molecular alignment to refract and focus light. If that alignment was disrupted, The crystal would scatter light instead of focusing it. What could disrupt crystalline alignment? He asked. Many things. Temperature changes, physical impact, chemical contamination. Orin paused. The challenge is delivering the disruption. Prism 1 will not allow you to get close enough to apply any of these methods. Marcus thought about the chemicals he had been exposed to during the trial of truths. Heavy water, arsenic, bioluminescent compounds, radioactive isotopes, viral agents, crystalline restructuring liquid, botulinum toxin. His body contained traces of all of them, carefully neutralized but still present in his bloodstream. But none of those would help him against a being of living crystal dot. Then he remembered something else, something he had carried with him from Earth. "Priya," he said slowly, "do you still have that emergency kit I gave you before we left home?" She nodded, confused. "Of course. I carry it everywhere. There should be a small bottle inside, labeled for water purification." Priya dug through her bag and produced the bottle. It was tiny, barely 50 milliliters, filled with a clear liquid that looked like water. "Sodium hypochlorite solution," Marcus said, taking the bottle. "Ordinary household bleach. We use it to purify water in emergency situations. How will that help you fight Prism 1? Marcus tucked the bottle into his pocket. "Bleach does not damage crystal, but it leaves behind microscopic residue on any surface it contacts. That residue disrupts the crystal's ability to focus light." Understanding dawned in Priya's eyes. "You are going to blind it. I am going to make it blind itself." Before Priya could respond, the guards arrived to escort Marcus to the arena. He squeezed her hand once, then allowed himself to be led away. The arena was a circle of transparent crystal 50 meters in diameter. Holographic projectors surrounded it, ready to magnify every moment of the combat for the watching delegations. Marcus stepped onto the crystal surface and felt it vibrate beneath his feet. The material was alive in some way, responding to his presence. Across the arena, a door opened, and Prism 1 emerged. The hegemony's champion was 3 meters tall, a humanoid sculpture of living crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Its body was flawless, every surface polished to mirror perfection. Eyes of pure diamond studied Marcus with cold intelligence. "You are the human," Prism 1 said, its voice like wind through glass chimes. "I have studied your species. You are fragile. Your bones break easily. Your organs rupture under minimal pressure. Your brain ceases to function when deprived of oxygen for mere minutes." "You seem to know a lot about killing humans," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "I know about killing everything. In 3,000 years, I have faced warriors from 400 species. I have learned their weaknesses. I have exploited their limitations. I have never been defeated. There is a first time for everything." Prism 1's form shifted, limbs reconfiguring into shapes designed for combat. Light began to gather within its body, focusing into beams that could cut through any material in the galaxy. "I will make this quick," the crystal being said, "for the sake of mercy." High Arbiter Velox's voice echoed across the arena. "The trial by combat begins. Fight until one combatant is dead or surrenders." Prism 1 attacked. The first beam of focused light sliced through the air, where Marcus had been standing half a second earlier. He threw himself to the side, rolling across the crystal floor, feeling the heat of the beam passing centimeters from his skin. Another beam followed, then another. Prism 1 was not aiming to kill immediately. It was testing Marcus, learning his movement patterns, calculating the optimal moment to strike. Marcus ran, dodged, and ducked, using every ounce of speed his aging body could produce. He knew he could not keep this up for long. His lungs were already burning. His legs were beginning to shake Dot, but he had a plan. He led Prism 1 around the arena, staying just ahead of the deadly light beams, moving in a pattern that seemed random but was actually carefully calculated. Each pass brought him closer to the center of the arena, where the holographic projectors created a concentration of light. "You cannot run forever," Prism 1 said, its voice showing the first hints of frustration. "Your species tires quickly. Your muscles fail. Your heart gives out." "You are right," Marcus gasped, finally stopping in the center of the arena. "I cannot run anymore." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small bottle of bleach. Prism 1 laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "What is that? A weapon?" "Human, I have been struck by plasma cannons and emerged unscathed. What could that tiny container possibly do to me?" "Nothing," Marcus admitted. "This will not hurt you at all." He opened the bottle and threw the contents directly at Prism 1's face. The crystal being did not even try to dodge. Why would it? No chemical could damage its perfect crystalline structure. The bleach splashed across its face, running down its body, leaving behind a thin film of residue. Prism 1 raised a limb, preparing to deliver the killing blow. Light gathered within its body, focused through its internal prisms, ready to cut Marcus in half. But something was wrong. The light did not focus properly. Instead of converging into a precise beam, it scattered wildly, refracting in random directions. Some of it bounced back into Prism 1's own body, the crystal being screened as its own weapon. Turned against it, Marcus dropped to the ground as beams of light shot out from Prism 1 in every direction. The Pion of the crystalline hegemony staggered, trying to control the light that was now tearing through its own structure. The bleach residue had done exactly what Marcus predicted. The microscopic film disrupted the crystal's perfect molecular alignment, scattering light instead of focusing it. Every attempt Prism 1 made to attack only damaged itself further. Cracks appeared in the crystalline body. Light leaked from wounds that grew larger with every passing second. The being that had been invincible for 3,000 years was destroying itself from the inside out. "What have you done?" Prism 1 demanded, its voice distorted by the damage. "What is this substance?" "Household bleach," Marcus said, climbing slowly to his feet. "You can buy it at any store on Earth for less than the cost of a meal. We use it to clean our bathrooms." Prism 1 tried to move toward him, but its body was failing. Too many internal structures had been damaged. Too many focusing prisms had been shattered. With a final cry of rage and disbelief, the champion of the crystalline hegemony collapsed. The grand chamber fell silent. Marcus stood alone in the center of the arena, breathing heavily, surrounded by the glittering fragments of his defeated enemy. High Arbiter Velox was the first to speak. "The human is victorious. The trial by combat is complete." The silence stretched for another heartbeat. Then, somewhere in the assembled delegations, someone began to applaud. The sound spread, growing louder, until the entire chamber was filled with the noise of 3,000 species acknowledging what they had just witnessed. A human had defeated an invincible enemy with a bottle of cleaning solution. Marcus looked up at the observation gallery, where Priya stood with tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Orin's shadowy form seemed to pulse with something that might have been satisfaction. In the hegemony's delegation box, Axiom 7 watched with crystalline eyes filled with hatred. This was not over. It could never be over. The human had humiliated the hegemony in front of the entire galaxy. But for now, for this moment, Marcus Webb had won. He had survived the trial of truths. He had exposed a conspiracy that had murdered 17 billion innocent beings. He had defeated an enemy that no one else could touch. And he had done it all with the skills he had learned as a chemistry professor in Ohio. galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. 3 days had passed since Marcus Webb defeated Prism One in the arena. The Galactic Council had convened in emergency session to address the crimes of the crystalline hegemony. Evidence continued to emerge, brought forward by species who had suffered under the hegemony's dominance for millennia, but had been too afraid to speak. The Threllian extinction was only the beginning. Across 10,000 years, the hegemony had manipulated wars, engineered disasters, and eliminated any species that threatened their power. The Void Swimmers, Orin's people, had been reduced from a galactic civilization to scattered survivors, hiding in the darkest corners of space. Dozens of other species had disappeared entirely, their worlds quietly sterilized, their histories erased from the Council's records. And now, finally, the truth was coming to light. In the Grand Chamber, High Arbiter Velox delivered the verdict that the galaxy had been waiting for. The crystalline hegemony is hereby stripped of its council seat. Its members are confined to their homeworld, pending a full investigation into their crimes. Any hegemony vessel found outside their system will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Axiom 7 stood in the prisoner's box, crystalline limbs restrained by energy fields that prevented any movement. The being that had orchestrated the deaths of 17 billion Threllians and countless others showed no emotion. Its faceted eyes simply watched, calculating, waiting. "This is not over," Axiom 7 said as guards led it away. "Humanity has made an enemy today that we'll never forget. We have existed for 1,000,000 years. We will exist for 1,000,000 more. And we will remember." Marcus watched from the observer platform, Kriya and Orin beside him. He felt no satisfaction in Axiom 7's threats, only weariness and a deep sadness for all the lives that had been lost. "The hegemony will try again," Orin said quietly. "They have always found ways to survive, to adapt, to continue their schemes." "Then we will stop them again," Priya replied. "As many times as it takes." After the session ended, Marcus was summoned to a private meeting with High Arbiter Velox. The chamber was small compared to the Grand Chamber, but it still dwarfed any room on Earth. Velox's mercurial form shifted constantly as the ancient being studied the human before it. "You have done something remarkable," Velox said. "In 40 years of council membership, humanity has been viewed as primitive newcomers, tolerated rather than respected. In 3 days, you have changed that perception." "I did what I had to do to protect my people," Marcus replied. "Nothing more. That is precisely what makes it remarkable." Velox's form solidified into something almost humanoid, a gesture of respect that few species ever received. "You did not rely on advanced technology or superior weapons. You used knowledge, understanding, the ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. That is what humans do. It is how we survived on our world. Yes, Earth." Velox seemed to consider the word carefully. "We have studied your world's historical records, the predators that hunted your ancestors, the diseases that decimated your populations, the climate shifts that destroyed entire civilizations, the poisons that lurked in your food and water. We call it home," Marcus said with a slight smile. "By any reasonable measure, your species should have gone extinct 1,000 times over. Instead, you adapted. You learned. You found ways to turn every disadvantage into an advantage." Velox's form shifted again, this time into something that might have been contemplative. "Do you know what the other species call Earth now?" Marcus shook his head. "They call it the Death World, a planet so hostile that surviving it should be impossible. And they call humans the Death World's children." Marcus was not sure how to respond to that. On one hand, there was pride in what his species had accomplished. On the other hand, he knew that humans were just as flawed, just as capable of cruelty and destruction as any other species in the galaxy. "We are not warriors," he finally said. "We are not conquerors. We are just survivors." "That is what makes you dangerous," Velox replied. "Warriors can be defeated. Conquerors can be outlasted. But survivors adapt. Survivors find a way. Survivors cannot be stopped by conventional means." The High Arbiter moved closer, its liquid form towering over the human. "The Council has decided to offer Earth a seat on the Senior Advisory Board. Your species will have a voice in the highest levels of galactic governance. This is unprecedented for a species so young, but after what you have demonstrated, the decision was unanimous." Marcus felt a surge of emotion that he struggled to control. 40 years of being dismissed as primitives, of being treated as second-class members of the galactic community, and now humanity would have a seat at the table where the real decisions were made. "I will need to consult with my government," he said, his voice thick. "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Velox's form shifted into something that might have been a smile. "But I suspect I already know what their answer will be." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Marcus spent most of it staring out the window of the diplomatic vessel, watching stars slide past, thinking about everything that had happened. Priya found him in the observation lounge on the final night before arrival. She sat beside him in silence, both of them watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. "Now we prove that we deserve the trust the Council has placed in us. We show them that humanity is more than just survivors. We show them that we can build, create, improve. That we are worthy partners in this galactic community." "And the hegemony?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. "They will try again. Orin was right about that. But we will be ready. Humanity has survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We will survive whatever the hegemony throws at us." Earth filled the viewport now, a blue marble hanging in the darkness of space. Billions of humans lived on that world, going about their daily lives, most of them unaware of how close they had come to losing everything. Marcus thought about his wife, waiting for him in their small house in Ohio. He thought about his grandchildren, who would grow up in a galaxy that finally saw their species as equals. And he thought about the lesson he had taught the Council, the lesson that had saved humanity. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest, the oldest, or the most advanced, but they were creative. They saw solutions where others saw impossibilities. They carried poison in their bodies and weapons in their pockets. They evolved on a death world, and they brought that death world's lessons with them to the stars. Never underestimate humanity. That was the lesson. On a distant world, light years from Earth, a young alien child sat in a classroom. The teacher, a being of flowing energy, projected images on the wall, showing the events at the Galactic Council. "This is the human called Marcus Webb," the teacher explained. "He survived the trial of truths by identifying poisons that had killed hundreds of beings before him. He exposed a conspiracy that had lasted 10,000 and years, and he defeated an enemy that no one else could touch." The child raised a manipulator limb. "How did he do it?" "With knowledge," the teacher replied. "Understanding. The ability to see what others could not see." The teacher paused, letting the lesson sink in. "The humans come from a world called Earth. It is one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Every moment of their existence is a fight for survival against predators, diseases, climate disasters, and poisons in their food and water." "That sounds terrible," the child said. "It is. But it is also what makes them powerful. The humans have been fighting to survive since the moment their species was born. Every cell in their bodies has been shaped by that fight. Every thought in their minds has been trained by that struggle." The teacher changed the image to show Earth, hanging in space, beautiful and deadly. Never challenge a human to survive something dangerous. They have been doing it since the day they were born. This is the lesson of the classroom challenge. This is the lesson of the Death World's children. The child stared at the image of Earth for a long moment and looked back at the teacher. What happened to the human? Marcus Webb? He returned to Earth. He became a senior advisor to the Galactic Council. He spent the rest of his life teaching others about his species, helping build bridges between humanity and the other races of the galaxy. Did the hegemony ever attack again? The teacher was silent for a moment. That is a story for another day. But I will tell you this. They tried. And every time they tried, humanity found a way to survive. Because that is what humans do. The lesson ended, and the child went home, carrying the images of Marcus Webb and Earth in its mind. That night, the child dreamed of a blue planet covered in water, where poison filled the air and danger lurked around every corner. And somehow, against all odds, life found a way to survive. That was the final lesson. The most important lesson. Life finds a way. Humanity is the proof.